And that's why in this case it seems pretty clear cut to me that yes, Jennifer Crumbley and her husband are responsible for this, enabling this to take place. I'm sure it's nothing they wished upon their child or to have happen, but I'm sorry, you provided a weapon for your 15-year-old child who seems to constantly have homicidal thoughts and demonstrates them to you and to others. Yet you still kind of want to pretend that there's nothing going on here. So I can see where in my opinion, should end in a conviction. But that's not always the case in situations like this, and that's what I wonder about. What kind of precedent could this be setting that may not be the type of precedent that we necessarily want? Are we going to be examining every school shooting case, which we likely should, to see what sort of influences took place there? But how quick are we going to be to judge every parent then going forward as being responsible or as ignorant and just ridiculously, grossly irresponsible, like the Crumbleys were, when in many cases, some parents just have no idea. And it's not for lack of trying or lack of care either.
Well, yeah, I see this seeping over into the serial killer realm,
Hmm.
right? We're talking about mass murderers, but then how about serial killers? How about I'll just take an accused, only accused, not convicted, uh, serial killer, Brian Koberger.
Hmm.
A lot of people have really put a microscope on those parents. You'll recall they were called to a grand jury, I guess, to testify regarding the actions of Brian Koberger related to another murder, and they hired attorneys
Hmm.
to say, "Listen, I'm not going in there to testify." And I bring this up because, even at this age where you have a grown individual and you have the parents still, to me, just not taking responsibility for, hey, listen, if you can't provide an alibi, just go in and tell the truth.
Hmm.
Quit covering.
Yeah.
And, we know that he had all sorts of issues apparently growing up. I'm not trying to cast, blame on these parents in any way. I'm just trying to say this is the sort of problem you get to going down this road, because once you start blaming one set of parents for not recognizing that their children are homicidal, where does it stop?
Well, and does it stop simply? Are we talking this being a parental issue, and it's 100% having to do with a parent having a child under the age of 18 that's doing these things that you are providing the weapons to because the child couldn't buy it legally themselves? Or are we going to go into territory which could be extremely slippery of other mass shooters? I mean, yes, we certainly have school mass shooters that are children, but every single day we have other mass shooters that are not children, people that walk into offices, people that take out people at concerts, people that do all sorts of horrible things that also have family that they live with. That family, which may be very fearful of the monster that's in their home, of saying anything for their own well being and safety. Do we start going after those people as well, who also may have seen the red flags that are right underneath them and know that they're living with a homicidal monster, but then don't say anything? Do we start judging every single person on this kind of see something, say something argument? And if you don't say something, are you just as responsible as that individual who went and carried something out?
I mean, you're exactly right, Tony, and that's the problem, because it starts being a little bit gray and a slippery slope. But I think everyone really needs to take note of, for instance, in this case, he lost his dog,
Hmm.
which some people, people who don't have a pet that they just truly love. By the way, I have a pet I truly love. Um, they don't understand how important that pet is to them. And this child lost his pet and his only friend moved. So those were two proximal events that I think really, really impacted, uh, triggered, if you will, and pushed him into committing, committing this
Hmm.
this atrocity. Right? So now you have parents that well know what's going on. They even talk about it in the text messaging. He's not handling this well, and so they knew that there were some triggering events, but they just couldn't put it all together. So
Yeah.
my only concern is, and I agree with you, Tony, they had these guns, they or a gun, They bought for him. They took him to the range. Um, they knew he had serious issues, and yet they bought him the gun. They didn't take him out of school when they were asked to take him out of school because they said, "Sorry, we've got work."
Yeah.
Um, so, but for me, did they really get it?
Yeah.
That I don't know. I just don't think they did.
Mhm.
But yet, without their actions, Tony, without their negligence, those four students would be alive. And I always like to keep focus on the people who lost their lives in this,
Yeah.
not just the people that committed the crimes.
Yeah, I mean, I completely agree. But it's also it's legislating ignorance to a certain extent, and the other part of this, is the whole mental health component. I mean, we need to find a villain here. That seems to be what's going on. We already have our one villain, but let's find more, and rightfully so. I'm not saying it's wrong that we're looking at that we're prosecuting these people to the fullest extent of the law, but again, we're talking about ignorant people who may or may not be capable of being responsible parents in terms of recognizing the mental health of their child. A lot of people are just simply ignorant to anything that has to do with mental health or the value of it or the importance of it, and that's a clear problem in our country. It's another moment where we seem to be almost kind of glossing over that part of it. Where this case, we're not blaming the guns specifically. We're not blaming. We're going after the parents here in this round. But again, a lot of this goes back to the mental health component. There's not a lot of resources out there for parents who are in a situation like this. I can almost understand the argument of the parents going, "Yeah, we have work, and our kid goes to school here, and maybe it is safer that the kid is at school under some sort of supervision." Rather than just being left to their own means, unsupervised at home, hoping that, well, maybe the school will, I don't know, prevent something like this from happening. But again, you're also putting someone into an environment where something absolutely horrible like this could take place and obviously did take place.
But just examining this, first of all, who would not search the backpack? The
Yeah.
parents didn't search the backpack. The school didn't search the backpack. That to me was just 101. If you're going to let him back in school, you've got to make sure he doesn't have any
Hmm.
dangerous weapons where he could remember they everybody thought they were afraid he was going to kill himself.
Yeah.
Parents thought that. The school was concerned about that. So it was more of a suicide. But why wouldn't you check the backpack to make sure, especially they knew they bought him that gun?
Hmm.
Um, Secondarily, Tony, what parent who loves their kid doesn't call their boss? Again, I'm not trying to be judgmental. I'm just asking the question to the audience.
Hmm.
What parent doesn't say, with all these factors, you know what, boss, I'm going to have to take off for the rest of the 2 hours or whatever it was left in the day, 3 hours. I have got to be with my son.
Yeah.
He is going through some major, major issues, and just ask for that. Or I think the father was Uber Eats driver. You know, I'm not going to do Uber Eats tonight. I understand there's bills to be paid, but when you look at your kid who's in this much of a uh, homicidal type showing signs of this, it's just shocking to me that they didn't, no bells went off.
It seems to be just kind of a prime example of people who were not living with reality on reality's terms, and because of that, missed the obvious signs that there was something very, very wrong going on here, and unfortunately, uh, poor children paid the ultimate price for it.
Tony, I did want to bring up one thing that for me makes my needle go to guilt,
Yeah,
and that was the Crumbleys went on the run.
that's true.
you know,
There is that
after
element to this story.
so all of this, I think, I could definitely teeter totter back. I could see both sides and the importance. They went on the run,
Yeah,
they hid. And so to me, that is consciousness of guilt.
yeah.
They knew that they had major responsibility in this. And I think that that's why, for me, I would think this jury is probably going to find her guilty. The sentence is another answer. or
Mhm.
another question, but I think they'll find her guilty.
Hey, it's Tony Brueski. If you like the podcast, be sure to like, subscribe, and press that bell so you don't miss any of our updates on the cases we're following for you right here at the Hidden Killers podcast from True Crime Today. And thanks